All right. So, welcome back to Set the Stage. We have with us today Alexis Stuart of Let's Take Pics. And Lex, tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, what brought you into this industry? I just want to know a little bit more of your background. And then we're going to be answering the question, what should couples know when they're hiring their photographer?
Awesome. Yes. So my name is Alexis or Lex, part of my brand. I'm always like Lex chat, Lex go all in, all that fun stuff. Anyways, I have been doing photography since high school. And prior to that, I've always had a love for storytelling. So I was like always into writing, like from the second I could pick up a pen. So that kind of started evolving into let me pick up the camera and tell stories that way. I spent 8 years working for a church doing marketing, social media, photography, and all kinds of stuff like that. And so it was probably May 2025 that I decided to go full-time photography because my wedding photography business was kind of my side hustle for many years. In 2020, obviously, we all know the pandemic happened. And that's when a lot of couples started eloping, having micro weddings, and really trusting small and up and coming photographers like myself to actually handle their day. And so that's actually when my photography took off, was 2020. Prior to that, I had only done like wedding stuff here and there, maybe some second shooting. So when I went full time in May of 2025, at that point I had shot around 70 weddings, but spread across almost 10 years. And then last summer I decided to go all in. That's when I met Melanie of Allegro, or you. We met at some networking events, and yeah, the rest is history.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things I wanted to talk about today is that so we met at what we call a vendor open house, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about open houses in general and like what that experience could be like for couples. Is that something that you would recommend couples to go to? And what's the benefit of it?
Yeah, so I definitely recommend venue open houses. I will say there's kind of like two kinds of wedding shows. There's these large scale wedding shows that happen at convention centers or hotels. And those are the big ones that you've probably heard about growing up from your mom and all of that. And those are great and they do have a lot of value. But if you already kind of know maybe your venue or you have a few venues in mind, I would actually recommend going to a venue open house because those are hosted by the venues, usually once or twice a year in your area, and you can actually go and meet some of their preferred vendors and really just have more personal conversations, I would say. And so usually these open houses, sometimes they'll have a cute theme or something, but they'll have maybe anywhere between 5 to 20 vendors. It's not as overwhelming as a big wedding showcase. You get to tour the venue and see what it looks like when it's not empty and stale, which is what usually a random Tuesday tour might look like. But during an open house, you get to see the venue a little bit decorated, full of people, the flow of people coming in and out, and you can kind of get a better picture of what your event or wedding might look like there.
Yeah, I love that. And so for you as a photographer, what are some questions that you hope that couples would ask you when they're coming up to you during an open house?
That is so good. I think overall, you want to love your photographer style. You want to look through their lookbook of images and be able to picture yourself on your day. And a lot of times, the book that they have on their table or the slideshow that they have, it's going to be their best images. We all know that. But ask to see a full gallery. And most photographers, the ones that you can trust, they will send you a full gallery to show you, hey, here's what the in-between moments look like, the ones that aren't as polished, all the different lighting scenarios, because that's really important too. A wedding day, the lighting is constantly changing. You have the getting ready location, which is usually earlier in the day, probably decently lit because they're getting ready near a window or the makeup artist has a ring light. And then as the day carries on, there could be so much mixed lighting depending on the weather. things of that nature. And then, of course, the party at night, typically there could be DJ lights going, and there's really some complex lighting situations. Also, ceremonies. A lot of churches and chapels don't even allow flash indoors. And so, you want to be able to see different parts of your wedding day through another photographer's portfolio. So ask to see a full gallery, know that you like their style. And then I would also say, know that you like their personality, because your wedding photographer is going to spend a lot of time with you on your wedding day. And if they're making you feel more stressed while you're getting ready, that kind of has a domino effect throughout the rest of the day. There's definitely other important things to ask. Like, you want to make sure they have good backup plans for their files. They're shooting on multiple SD cards in case one gets corrupt. There's technical stuffs that I think are important as well. What's the turnaround time? What are the expectations? And a good photographer will lead the way in those conversations, because chances are you're getting married for the first time, maybe second, but you're not doing this all the time. But your photographer, or any vendor that you choose, is doing this all the time. And they can definitely help lead the conversation, because, again, you don't always know what to ask.
Absolutely. Obviously, we know that there are different levels and different budgets and just so many different factors when it comes to choosing your photographer. What would be something that would be a red flag for someone to look out for when they're navigating that process?
Yeah. So, like you said, there are different budgets, and some photographers are just starting out and they're going to offer portfolio discounts. There's other photographers that are more seasoned that still might offer a portfolio discount if your wedding is something they really want to shoot, like a destination or something. But overall, the ones that are bending over backwards to give you the cheapest deal aren't always going to give you the most value. Because a well-seasoned photographer, they don't just know how to take good photos. They know how to react throughout the wedding day, and they know when to take charge, like during family portraits, and they know when to kind of lean back and be a fly on the wall and let the moments happen naturally. But I will say some red flags overall would be if they are willing to hand over all their raw files. A raw file is actually a really large image type that you need a special software to look at and edit. It doesn't just mean unedited image, it means it's a large file. And that is a big misconception. And I think some less seasoned photographers are willing to hand over all the raws, which means you might also be getting images with somebody's eyes are closed or they're making a funny face. Like, a good photographer is going to cull and edit those images down so that you're getting the best of the best.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even realize that too, because when I hear raw file, I think, like you said, unedited photos. I'm thinking more or less, and this has become really popular recently, has been the content creator, right? So the content creator, a raw file from a content creator is massively different than a raw file coming from a camera that, like, how do you even, I'm trying to wrap my brain around how much space you would need on your hard drive to just be able to edit photos, because they're so large, but that's why they're so good. Like, it has all of those little details. And like you said, having someone who's able to navigate that and like look through everything before they give it to you, essentially, you might be paying less, but then you're putting more work on you because now you've got to edit those and you've got to look through that stuff. And like, that's wild.
Yeah, and a lot of brides or grooms, when they're looking for the cheapest deal, they're often going to get the photographers that are cutting corners. Okay, we're not going to sort through them all. We're just going to hand you all the raws. Or they may not even be aware of your timeline on your wedding day and they're just showing up. Like, you're going to get these photographers who are not paying attention to the full picture of the day.
Tell me a little bit more about the full picture and what your role is in that. Specifically, I want to know how much planning goes into the back end.
So that's a great question. I know every photographer has a little bit of a different process. For me personally, I just launched and created this guide that is about 25 pages that my couples receive. And that mostly guides them through their planning in terms of photos. I'm not trying to overstep with your actual coordinator or wedding planner. We want to work in tandem together. And then about 1 month prior to the wedding day, we'll also sit down and meet. And I have a 10-page questionnaire, which seems overwhelming at first, but I try and give it to my couples early on in the wedding planning process so they can fill it out little by little, because it's better to plan with photos in mind than make a plan and then realize you never thought about the photos, because then you have to go back and change things. So a couple of the things that I think are super important: family portraits is a really big one. How many people you want in those? When I sit down and talk to my couples, I want to know if, there's an estranged family member, because we're going to make sure that these two people don't stand next to each other in portraits. Like, we're going to try
Yes.
to eliminate any drama. And then, there's other important things too. I think a lot of times people get so concerned on the amount of hours coverage they're having, and then they try and squeeze everything into that like little window of photo coverage. The biggest things I like to ask is, are you having a send off at the end of the night? If you're not having a send off, then I, as your photographer, can probably leave an hour into dancing, because if you guys are dancing for 3 hours, it's all going to be the same thing. But if you are doing one, whether it's a bubble exit, a private last dance, sparklers, whatever, then you're probably going to want your photographer to stay till the end. And that really affects amount of coverage. So I always say, start with the end of the day and then work our way back. So if you have a 6-hour photo coverage and your send off is at 10, then we'll work our way back, which means they start right around 4. And if that's not enough time before your ceremony, then we got to add a little bit more coverage to the day. There's so many little things to consider for my couples who maybe they want me, they're on a budget, but they see my value. I really encourage them to book me in at the package that they can most comfortably afford. And then closer to the wedding day, if there's extra money in the budget, put some add-ons. Let's add on an extra 2 hours of coverage. It's always easier to add things on than it is to take away.
Yes, we do the same thing as far as when it comes to booking venues specifically. There's a lot of venues that have a bare bones package or an all-inclusive package, but you have to remember that even if you think that you might use that all-inclusive package, if you wait, you're really playing Russian roulette here. There's only one wedding that can happen that day, and the same with photographers. If you're booked, you're booked. So for us, when we're working with couples, especially in the beginning stages, I always say, whatever you can do, if you need to do the bare bones package, you need to do the minimum just to start, just to get it reserved, and then we can figure it out along the way. All the rage right now is talking about fake exits, quote unquote. It's all over TikTok and Instagram, and especially the DJs are like, no fake exits. What is your take on that? And how does that work as far as photography? Because I love what you said about like going backwards. So if they're having a staged exit, how does that look in the photos? Just tell me a little bit more about staging in general.
Yes. So anything fake, you're going to remember as fake, I think. When you look back later, you're going to remember that it was fake. Even though it could have been fun still to do the fake exit. I have actually been a wedding guest where they've had a fake exit. So I've seen it from both perspectives as a guest photographer. And I will say that when the fake exit happens, you're stopping the party, you're bringing everyone out, and then they're already outside. So it kind of is like, well, maybe I'll leave after. Even though the idea is to go back in and continue partying, that way your photographer can leave and you've already gotten those moments. If you are doing a fake exit and you are planning that a little bit earlier in the night, here's my advice. Don't bring the whole crowd out. Actually, just bring your bridal party. I think that's enough to create beautiful images. I've even seen, it wasn't an exit, it was just the bride and groom and sparklers. And that was my best friend's wedding. They didn't have a send off. It was just them two and sparklers. And the photographer took them outside for a few minutes and they had some fun together. But if you are doing the whole big fake exit and you're including all your wedding guests and you're not taking my advice for just the bridal party, then give your guests an incentive to go back in. And what that means is maybe the bride is getting ready to do a big outfit change. Maybe there's late night snacks. Maybe there's like something that's like, okay, now we're going to keep the party going. Or if you want exit like photos, but you don't care when they happen, consider doing a ceremony exit instead. Or
Oh,
consider doing a more fun entrance into your reception. So you could still have, instead of everyone seated, you can have them all tunneled up and you guys run through it before the reception starts. And even as your exit for your ceremony, everyone can get bubbles or streamers or, you know, back in the day, you see all the iconic images and videos of everyone lined up outside the church and the couple would exit and everyone's throwing rice. That's how it all kind of started. So if you like the idea of an exit, but you don't necessarily want to do it at the end of the night, think about when other times of the day it might make sense.
yes. When it comes to traditions, you said throwing the rice, and it just reminded me of all of the different traditions that there are. Are there any traditions that you personally just love and you're like, this, I love working with couples that have this tradition? Just tell me a little bit more about traditions.
Yes. Well, this might be a hot take for photographers, but I am actually team don't see the bride until the aisle. And a lot of photographers are team, let's have a private first look. I mean, honestly, I'm team whatever the bride and groom want to do. But for my own wedding day, we didn't see each other before the aisle, and I absolutely loved it. We did a first touch, so we were on either sides of a threshold and held hands. So we didn't see each other. And I always think that's so sweet. You still get a moment together without seeing each other. But there are some people, you know, they have a lot of nerves, and your person is the one who calms you down. So I totally understand the ones that do. Because a first look can definitely make your timeline planning easier, because if the bride and groom see each other before the ceremony, that means you can get a lot of portraits out of the way and you don't have to take up cocktail hour time. But yeah, traditions in general, I love them. I love it when a bride and groom don't just do tradition for the sake of tradition, but they do it because it's actually important to them. They do it because it's maybe part of their heritage. I have seen so many cool unity ceremonies, some of them not traditions. Like the unity ceremony is the part of the ceremony where sometimes people will pour sand together and then the sand blends, or they'll light a candle. But one time I saw a couple make a cup of coffee. And it was so fun. It was so them. It was not a tradition. Who else has made a cup of coffee? Or I've seen like making a PB&J sandwich and you put it together. So you can create your own traditions too. You don't have to get so hung up on the something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. There are new things that you can do to make your day important.
How do you guide couples through that process of personalizing their experience?
Yeah. So when I meet with them, and even in the guide I give them, I do give ideas of like, here's what I did on my wedding day, or here's something I've seen before. And I ask questions that might prompt them to think of their own ideas. I ask, will there be any surprises during the ceremony, such as flower grannies or this or that? And then it sometimes makes them pause and they're like, well, actually, I hadn't even thought about that, because most people don't know what they don't know. And if you can ask the right questions as a planner and a photographer and the vendor team, it encourages them to think about things, not just because they saw it on Pinterest or social media, but because it's something that's true to them.
And how much influence or how much would you recommend a couple use Pinterest? Especially, I'm working with a couple right now and they're about to do their engagement session. When we're looking at save the dates, I said, do you have any inspiration for save the dates? So they have this Pinterest board and they're like, oh, I like this, I like this, I like this. This is something that I recommended to share with the photographer, but how much does that actually help?
Yeah. So most of my clients don't send me Pinterest boards anymore. I think they realize, they see my Instagram, they trust my work enough to be like, yeah, that's what I want. I want the
Yes.
lifestyle images that you're already producing. Like, you are Pinterest. I mean, that's the goal, right? I'm getting less and less Pinterest boards sent to me. But when I do get them and I talk to my couples, I'm like, send me a few images that really speak to you. Give me your top one or two that you're like, these are the ones that I really want, and we're going to make those happen for sure, but in a way that's true to your day and in a way that's true to my style and you guys as a couple as well.
That's iconic, literally. We can create this for our couple. I feel like your background in marketing really helps with that too. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that aspect, about your background and how you tell stories? You call yourself the poetic storyteller.
Yeah.
How do you bring that out of a couple?
Yeah, for sure. That's going to come with a lot of movement and a lot of prompting instead of stiff poses. So, we are going to do a few stiff poses. But one thing I noticed too is that probably the first 20 minutes of the photo shoot, like, I'll keep a few of those pictures, but like the good stuff comes later in the photo shoot. The first 20 minutes is like them getting comfortable. I even had like a couple that's like, I need to get a drink in me to loosen up a little. And they were so nervous that first year. And now every year on their anniversary, they do a photo shoot. And they were like, we can't imagine yours with anyone else. And I've got to see them go from celebrating their first wedding anniversary to now having, I think she's almost 3 years old, their daughter. And they were pregnant. And then, yeah. And so I got to see all of that every year we shoot together. But in general, I do ask questions, even if it's not a full wedding day, it's just maybe a small elopement or it's your engagement session. I'm going to ask you, like, how did you guys meet? What's your favorite song? Are you introverts or extroverts? Do you have any insecurities or things that you don't want accentuated on camera? Because I want to know that stuff. I want you to feel like confident. And then when we're doing the photos, like, I'm going to make the guy twirl her and I'm going to give guidance on how that looks best on camera. I always encourage them, like, movement is key because it's the in between that are the moments that really translate well on camera. And then details are key too. So zooming in on the rings or just like his arms around her or touching the face, her nails, little details and stuff like that help tell the story. And so I try and get a good variety. You get the real close-up details, you get like the half body, the full body, and then like wide shots. Wide shots are so defining because they just show where you're at, what the day looked like, the vibe, all of that.
When you can't actually be in the room, you have to be able to bring that to the picture,
Yeah.
And those pictures are one of the only things that you have that's concrete that you're going to stay forever. Your wedding is one of those days that you're going to want to go back to it. You're going to want to remember because it's a core memory. So to have someone that can really capture that essence is so important.
I've noticed a trend for couples like going away from wanting so much stage stuff to just more of the like lifestyle, fly on the wall, documentary. So definitely in the industry, they're like, you know what? We're done with all the poses and all the forced stuff. We are spending all this money. Like, we want to spend time with our people. So a lot of them want to go to cocktail hour. A lot of them want to be with their guests. And so it's finding those creative ways like, okay, if you're not going to take portraits during cocktail hour, then we're going to find another time in the day to do that. Or maybe you don't even want portraits. You just want a lot of candids to show what's happening. And so it's really leaning into what the couple wants, but still being true to the style of the photographer.
I'm seeing right now, we're getting booked sometimes without even having a first conversation. So I'm wondering what your experience is with that and like what your thoughts are.
Yeah. As I said earlier, I think it's so important to be able to connect on a relational level with your photographer because they are spending a huge chunk of the day with you. You want to be able to vibe well because if they have a stressful personality, that will stress you out and it will set a bad tone for the day. But in 2 out of my 3 wedding packages, I do offer an engagement session. And I will get people price shopping that are like, oh, like if we don't do the engagement session, is it cheaper? And no, because I view the engagement session like your makeup trial. Like when you book a makeup artist, you do a makeup trial to see how you like the makeup, how it looks on you. Maybe you give them like, oh, can we do this different on my wedding day? So your engagement photos are similar. It's setting the tone for the whole wedding. It's the first visuals people get, what to expect. Maybe it has to do with your theme, but it gets you comfortable not only in front of the camera, but in front of the camera with your photographer. So you guys are building that chemistry for the wedding day, and the wedding day is not the first time they get to interact with you. Now, the goal and idea is by the wedding day, they've already had their engagement session with me, and then they've had their pre-wedding meeting with me, and maybe one other like consult or something. So we've had at least 3 interactions, hopefully by the wedding day, where they feel comfortable. Every now and then when a couple does ask, hey, can we already have engagement photos, I actually will honor a transfer. So if they're doing maybe a bridal shower or a rehearsal dinner, I will transfer that coverage up to whatever time limit is included in their package, because I'm all about building happy couples and having happy clients, but also I'm still getting that chemistry build during their rehearsal dinner or during their bridal shower. They're still getting a little bit of that face-to-face with me. And I rather work a little bit more and have a great interaction with my couples than just, oh yeah, let's just throw that away. Let's not even do your engagement session or an equivalent.
Yeah. How often does that happen where you have someone book you who has already done an engagement session?
That's a good question. I will say it's probably like less than 10%.
Oh,
Most of the time, a couple is reaching out because they want you for engagement and the wedding. I do have a wedding coming up this November, and she booked my whole package, which included the engagement photos. And then she ended up doing engagement photos with someone else this summer because they live out of town a few hours away. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love your pictures. You do know it's included in your package. She's like, yeah. She's like, we might do a second one with you later, but we just needed to get our save the dates out, and we live so far away. So I feel like it does happen with more of my out of town clientele.
mhm.
I had a wedding in February. They were from out of state. I have a wedding coming up. I'm flying over to Virginia in the spring. I have another one next March. They're coming in from out of state. So it's really more of the out of state, out of towners, which is a decent amount living in Orlando.
How important is it that you book a photographer that is in the area that you're getting married if you are from out of town?
So a lot of photographers will do portfolio discounts because they're just dying to shoot somewhere. I've seen it. Like they're like, I will shoot your wedding for free if you just pay for my travel to Bali, like, or wherever, great and all. And maybe that works, but they also don't know Bali. Like they're going to get there and they have to do research and all that. So the wedding I am doing in Virginia, I'm not too familiar with the area. I will say there was a portfolio discount in there because they're getting married in a cave. But I personally have known this couple for 10 years. I've already worked with them before in previous sessions or other things. And so where I lack in knowing the area, I make up for in the chemistry that we have. They wanted somebody who knew them and all of that. So there are exceptions. I will say, like, never book a destination, but a lot of people are traveling to Orlando, whether it's to get married and have a Disney fairy tale wedding or Universal or just elope or while they're here. And it is really helpful having a planner and a photographer who knows the area, because they can give you the ins and outs, like, oh, we're going to go in this back alley that you have never heard of and you wouldn't have even seen on Pinterest, but the locals know what's up.
Yeah, I was thinking that with the venue as well. A lot of times, if you haven't been in a venue, you said something earlier about some venues don't allow flash photography. Has there ever been a time or a case where you've heard of, or maybe you've experienced this, where you might have thought that you were going to do flash photography and you get there and you find out that's a rule?
So every question that I have on my questionnaire has come from a wedding where I didn't ask the right questions. So
Yep.
anytime something else happens, or I'm like, oh, add that to the questionnaire. I can't remember exactly what, but it's mostly Catholic churches. So mostly the ceremony locations will have more restrictions, or other places of worship. There are some chapels that they don't care, they don't mind, and that's fine. But I always make a point to ask, especially if I know they're getting married in a chapel or a church or a sanctuary of some sort. Because if it is a place of worship, the flash, and then there's even actually restrictions on where we're allowed to stand as a photographer. I've had some places only allow me to stand on the back wall of the place. So I need to know that so I can have a zoom lens. And the couple also needs to have the expectation of, hey, your photos are not going to be as bright. Like, I know how to shoot in low light, trust me, but they will have a different look to them than ceremonies that you may have seen with flash.
How often do you get booked before the venue is booked?
I don't think I've ever been booked before the venue. I mean, there are some people that are like, when I get married one day, I want you to be my photographer, but they never actually booked me. I would say your venue should be the first thing you book. Some couples are glued to a date and some are glued to a venue. And if you're glued to a venue, the couples that are like, no, this is the place I have to get married, then the couples are a little bit more flexible on the date or when or whatever. But if they're glued to a date and they're like, this is our like special anniversary date, and or it's 02727, then they might have to be more flexible on the venue. But I will say, if you don't know where to start and you're like, what venue or vendor should I book first? I would say go with your planner, because your planner is going to help you make those decisions. And I know you guys at Allegro have started offering that pre-planning process, which I think is so cool.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why we offer it, is because the venues, I always call them the gatekeepers, because some venues come with a planner, some come with a coordinator, some come with a photographer, some come with different rules and regulations and things like that. And it's very interesting that you said that you don't normally book couples before the venue because of that reason. Like, there are so many different factors that you just don't know. And you can't really even start booking vendors because you don't have a date, you don't have anything solid. And also, if a date is important, I always recommend either be flexible on your date, or you are going to have to think about maybe planning a year, 2 years in advance, because now you're working with limited offerings. Another thing is holidays. A lot of people want to get married on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day or Valentine's Day.
There's holiday charges.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know about you, but we pay our staff time and a half during a holiday. Like, we'll work on Thanksgiving, no problem, but it's going to be a 50% upcharge. Hey,
we're taking time away from our families to be at your special day. So it's going to be worth our while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So many factors, and photography really is one of those, unless you're working with like a larger company, which, because photography is so personal and the style is so unique to the individual that's shooting, unless you're working with one of these big companies, you are going to have a lot of factors that are going to influence the price. Yes, we all have packages, we all have standards, but I do feel like sometimes you just gotta ask. What are other things that you think that couples should ask their photographer, or maybe something that might have scared a couple away? Tell me a story about a time when you've booked a couple. What was that thing that sent them to the yes when they might have been on the fence?
Yeah, I do think like you can ask for things, but knowing to ask respectfully, like don't just assume there's discounts. I will say with the wedding that I booked for next year that's out of state, it didn't even start with them inquiring with me. It was a conversation that we were just having, and they were like, hey, I just referred so-and-so to you. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Like, I heard you're getting married too. And she's like, yeah, but I'm out of state. I don't think I can ever afford to have you. And I was like, well, actually, and I kind of offered the deal. And by the end of us talking, she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I said something, because I was able to make it work. Instead of her paying for my travel out of pocket, they're using points, and I'm fine with that. Like, you can book my travel as long as I get there and I'm not in the cargo, we're fine. I think the biggest thing I see in Facebook groups is always like, I'm looking for a photographer that doesn't charge an arm and a leg, or I'm looking for someone in my budget. say what your budget is. Like, it's okay to say what your budget is. But on the other hand, like photographers, we need to have our starting prices, all vendors should, on our websites so that couples can realistically know whether or not you are even in their budget, and we're not wasting each other's time at the beginning. Like, oh, well, I fell in love with this photographer, but they're 3 times my budget. And
Yeah.
I firmly believe that everybody should have access to good wedding photos, but that there's also a photographer for every budget.
Yes. Zola actually just started a series. One of our planner friends, Perfectly Planned by Yaz, just
I
got
saw
featured.
that.
And it talks about the breakdown of what a wedding costs. And I thought that was so interesting because there's so much taboo out there. People think that there's this wedding fee. Like if you say it's a wedding, it's going to be more expensive. It's like, no, weddings are just expensive.
There's a baker, she posted recently about that. She's like, I don't just charge more because it's a wedding cake. I charge more because this, and this. And like, she explained it. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, it's not just because you
Yeah.
put the word wedding in front. There are extra things that have to be taken into consideration.
Yeah. I had a thought about ChatGPT and how we all ask questions now to either Gemini or ChatGPT or all of these AI agents, but they're also getting their information from the internet. And so if there's a big taboo out here saying like, oh, there's a wedding charge, or there's a wedding fee, or oh, you can ask for discounts, and oh, you can do these things, like that might not actually be true. So fact check your own facts, if that makes sense, when it comes to having these consultations. Just remember, we're all people at the end of the day. Well, Lex, tell me, how do couples get in touch with you if they're interested in your services? What is the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, so I am on all platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of that, but all of them will lead you to the same place. My website, which is Lex Take Pics, LEXTAKEPIX.com. And there's an inquiry form on there, and that all gets funneled into my inbox, and then I respond from there. I think, if someone DMs me, I try and stay on top of that, but like, I used to try and be like on every messaging thing. I'm like, it's a lot to manage. So if you really want to work together, fill out that inquiry form and I'll get an email to you. Typically, I always include a link to schedule a call so you can pick a time that works for you, and it would also work with my schedule.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was so informational. So many good nuggets in there for couples to really understand what goes behind the camera and what should be taken into consideration. But I do think just hearing this and boiling it all down to find somebody who you're comfortable with, find somebody who knows what they're doing, who understands family dynamics, who understands people, and who are just let things happen naturally and let them move with the day.